Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 237. So glad you could join me. Today's guest is Raymond Hammond. He'll be here in about 5 minutes. But before we get into it, say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995, almost 30 years. We're unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do it all because we love poetry. And I know you do too, so please do click the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Click the follow button, which really helps, especially on those other platforms that you don't even watch. If you're following us on like iTunes and Spotify and Apple, or no, I guess Amazon Music, all that kind of stuff. If you click follow there, it really helps out a lot. So please do if you would, even if you watch this primarily on YouTube, because we like to spread poetry as far and widely as possible. And your clicks help that in the current age of algorithms, I almost said destroying, running everything. Now we're going to go to our Poet Respond poet to start with. And Tishani Doshi, the wonderful poet, she was on a past Rattlecast, if you want to go back in time. She, of course, is in India. It's about 4 a.m. where she is, so she can't join us. But she had this poem, a really powerful response to an Israeli rabbi calling for killing all Palestinians in Gaza. So many of the poems for the last, really for months, that we get in Poet Respond have been about the situation in Gaza. And this is just a powerful response to that, as Tishani is really wonderful at doing. She just says to this quote from the rabbi, not sure there are any explanations, how must we be alone, how must we be together? And that was her short note to this poem. And here she is, Tishani Doshi, reading this poem for you right now.
Kill them in the morning. I'm trying to find where it says, if your enemy comes to slay you at night, kill them in the morning. What happens in the hours of waiting? Do you sing to one another across the trenches, stargaze from casements, then set off to duel at first light? What is it about the sun rising that's so self-righteous? The firstness, the lightness. There's an allegory somewhere about a girl holding scissors encircled by soldiers with guns. Don't we know that the dragging from trains takes place after dark? That wars always happen off stage until they're not? Summer is almost upon us, romantic and lonely. I know, no tightrope walking allowed between our house and the neighbors. Haven't you dreamed of disappearing for a day, then returning to life triumphant? Wouldn't you want to know who missed you, who rejoiced? The idea that there are no innocent people. What color would you call this hair under the rubble? My enemy's enemy is an Ottoman couch. But we're here now, those of us alive, standing on the beach, facing the rosy dawn. How it slip-slaps us into forgiveness, how we turn the other cheek.
And once again, that was Tishani Doshi reading Kill Them in the Morning, Sunday's Poet Respond poem on rattle.com. And Tishani couldn't be here tonight, but we do have a special surprise guest in the second hour. So be sure to stick around for hour number 2 after we talk to Raymond. But for right now, I'm going to take a quick break and get right back with Raymond Hammond. So sit tight, and I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. Today's guest is Raymond Hammond. Raymond is editor-in-chief of both the New York Quarterly and NYQ Books. He holds an M.A. in American Poetry from NYU's Gallatin School and is the author of Poetic Amusement, a book of literary criticism. He lives in Beacon, New York with his wife, the poet Amanda J. Bradley, and their dog, Hank. For more information, you can find at Raymond Hammond, raymondhammond.com. And here he is, Raymond Hammond. Hey, Raymond, it's great to have you on.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, I'm such a long-time fan of everything that New York Quarterly does, and there's such an affinity between Rattle and the kind of poetry that you publish, a kind of grittier, more down-to-earth poetry, I would say, more, real human storytelling and not, higher academic-minded type poetry. And so, it's really fun to sort of be working in parallel for such a long time, but we've never met, and it's great to see you now.
We work very closely together. We shared a lot of poets, that's for sure.
Yeah, we definitely do. I mean, most of the poets' books you publish are poets that we publish frequently. And it was great having you in that tribute to Appalachian Poets issue back a couple years ago.
That was fun.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to start out with a poem of your own? It's really interesting to see. I didn't really know, I hadn't read much of your poetry until that submission to that issue came in. And it's going to be really fun to look at other poems of yours as well as talking about the book Poetic Amusement. Do you want to start out with a poem?
Yeah, it's probably the longer one I'll do tonight. So this is called The Believers. And this is for those believers who believe their belief trumps truth. It seeped deep into their bones. Unadulterated capitalism filled the bone marrow chasms and bled hatred and disgust and disdain until it oozed out for everyone to see. Christians, patriots, fascists, were all consumed by this thing called capitalism, which once unfettered and loosed by a slack of religion, then married to religion, was manifested as greed, pure selfishness, treachery, and murder. Moloch loosed upon the masses by simple utterances and grumblings, demonic politicians created from nothing by mere wishes, a malcontent collected by a semi-consciousness of wills. Those who had created them then withdrew into their own shells of safety behind walls of disrespect and goddamned ignorance of all others. They then only understood their own needs and knew their own imagined fears told to them repeatedly in shadow puppet shows run by puppet masters who freely pulled their puppet strings. The garrote of godliness tightened tightly around the necks of the faithless believers, strangling any spiritual understanding until they relented to ignorance or choked on the mouths filled with hosts of religious intentions, the rationalization to believe, to beg for faith, to have some measure of hope. But hope only came in their own damned selves, and even more damnable myths, forgetting science and facts and choosing rather to solely believe, an excuse to not hear, see, speak, or apply critical thinking. Belief is not faith. Belief is hope without foundation. Faith is knowing beyond doubt, and while belief reigned supreme, discernment of faith became as dead as Isaac would have been under Abraham's blade, had Abraham's faith been found as equally ill-equipped and godless and believed only in the lamb and not had true faith. God's not a lamb in the bush. God is the last hope-filled glance. God is is thought, an idea, a gleam in the artist's eye, words, sound in the poet's mind, the mind's eye, the consciousness found in every person. Without consciousness, there is no God. So then, if thought is dead and reason also dead, all we have is thoughtlessness, self-righteous worldview with self-sanctifying belief in self-fulfilling prophecies, in myths of our making. Then the collective weight of humankind's own ignorance, hubris, and struggle to replace faith with belief, God with religion, capitalism, competition, hate, and fear-mongering will be that belief and those who believe will have served to faithfully kill God dead.
And that was Raymond Hammond, an opening poem, The Believers. For those believers who believe their belief trumps truth. Really interesting poem to start with, Raymond. And it ties in, to a lot of the themes from Poetic Amusement as well, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about New York Quarterly itself and how you came to be the publisher of and do so much with that press.
Well, It was all quite by accident. I moved to New York to study poetry back in the late 80s, early 90s, and was working at the Statue of Liberty as a law enforcement park ranger at the time. And found out from another ranger that there was this cool magazine called the New York Quarterly and this legendary editor named William Packard. So I went to NYU and I said, well, I want to study with this guy. I read the New York Quarterly and immediately fell in love with it. It immediately resonated with the authenticity of its authors. That's what we share in our authors is authenticity more than almost anything else. And so I signed up for a class, and I went and went the first night of class. And now William Packard was known as a very imposing kind of bark is worse than his bite kind of person. And he would take names and ask, who do you listen to? Who do you like to read? Where have you studied before? And he would just kind of make notes and keep his head down. And he got to me and I said, well, I work at the Statue of Liberty as a law enforcement ranger. And one of my favorite poets is Anna Adams, which was this park ranger's friend that knew Bill. And he looks up and he then puts his head back down and he goes, well, who do you like to read? And I said, I ended the list with myself. I said, and myself. And he smacked his hand on the top of the desk and he goes, that's exactly right. If you don't like what you're doing, what are you doing here? So then he came in 3 nights later with a ratty red folder that had a police warrant in it to appear in court. And I went and served it for him that night. He said, NYPD can't get this done. Will you get it done? It was a stalker. A woman was stalking him. And we just kind of clicked from there on out. He invited me to work with him at NYU and the Gallatin School. And most of my classes there were with him, self-designed, meeting at the Chelsea Gallery Diner in Manhattan, having a hamburger. I had to buy him a hamburger every Saturday.
So what was how long had the New York Quarterly been running, and what was Packard's vision? And what made, that authenticity is so obvious in what's published now, but what made that unique? What was Packard setting out to do?
Well, he was setting out to stand against what he saw happening with the academic poetry world, where it was becoming kind of a bland, vanilla landscape. And he saw this back in 1969. That's when he put the magazine together. The magazine was actually official on 9/11, 1969. And has had very sporadic in and out publication periods because of money and time and resources and everything else. But back then he really wanted to see the salt of the earth get published. He wanted to see the people who were plain spoken but yet very deep in thought. Not people who were shallow in thought, but shallow maybe in words and deep in thought. And that suited me perfectly.
Yeah. So I think we'll talk about Poetic Amusement, which ties in so much to that in just a second. But let's do another poem first. Do you want to read Eschatology next?
Sure. I put together a collection of poems that are basically anti-religion, but they're not really anti-religion. This is an example of what I'm doing. So this is called Eschatology. I want to dance in the snow in the dark of night, like I did before there was a weather radar, to show the precise moment the snowfall will end, our clocks the precise moment the first light will break. I want to live in the moment of eternity where this night and this snowstorm have always been and always will be, to exist solely in possibility. I want to dance in the snow in the dark of night without any prediction of a coming clearing of clouds, without any promise of a dawn.
And there was another poem by Raymond, Eschatology. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Raymond. And so the book Poetic Amusement is sort of the bringing it all together, all those ideas that you were talking about with Packard beforehand. It was your PhD thesis, which became a book. So how did you come up with it? Because I read it back again. I read it probably 10 years ago or more, maybe 15 years ago, or maybe even more than that, maybe like 18 years ago. I don't know. And so I read it again, and I was struck. I kind of almost had forgotten how great that the use of amusement is in that context. I'd kind of forgotten about what you meant by that. And so I was a little bit blown away by that fact, but about amusement being a without the muse. And how the muse is really our subconscious speaking, and so the premise of the book is kind of that just to put it in a really small package is that when poetry entered academia and became an MFA program started springing up, and it was a really profitable thing for colleges to do. There's nothing else to do but focus on craft and get people to be better poets. And so we focus so much on craft that we lose touch with that side of us, that unconscious self that really is speaking through art. And so we've lost that half of everything as we become more professionalized into poetry. So how did that concept come together? Whereas what we're doing is amusing ourselves with poetry rather than musing ourselves.
Right. Well, that's what it's turned out to be. We're kind of at the bottom of the curve. This was when I wrote this book back in the late 90s, early aughts. We were kind of at the top of the roller coaster going over the top of the hill. And now we're kind of down in the valley, as far as I see it. But Bill, it came out of discussing with Bill, he hated MFA programs. And he wanted me to write a thesis that destroyed the concept of MFA programs. And I set out to do that. Did tons of research, but I found that MFA programs are really kind of good for people. It's just a money suck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it can really be good for writers in some ways.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean that's something we've talked about in the past on the show is how that MFA really is, even though it's great if you can afford it. Like it's nice to have that time to set aside to write, to focus on your craft, to hear feedback from other people, to have just free time to read while you're in a program and focus on that. It does make people better writers. And there's also the whole psychological effects of going through poems and generating creativity. Impacts people in a positive way too. So it's a really wonderful thing. But at the same time, it is a pyramid scheme where, everybody at the bottom rungs is hoping to, if they pay enough dues, they'll be higher up in the pyramid eventually where the people below them are paying the dues to them teaching the classes. And the problem with that is that we just build more and more with any other, multi-level marketing scheme. You build more and more people selling cutlery steak knives or whatever, and you run out of customers eventually. In a model like that. And that's what happens with the MFA program. And you have, too many poets and too many writers in general vying for too few jobs, and the whole system eventually has to collapse when it can't keep up. And it seems to me that we're in that spot right now where MFA programs just can't keep up at all with the load of the poets and writers that they're producing.
Right. Back in the 60s, early 70s, the English department started catching on that MFA programs were a cash cow. What we didn't see was the enemy coming for humanities in general to be a second wave of assault on the English programs after the first wave of assault back in the 50s and 60s on humanities. but the MFA program was seen as the savior of the English department. And then we reached the top of that roller coaster, and now we're headed to the bottom, and we're starting to see English departments jettison MFA programs. It's just starting to happen just a little bit here and there, but it's happening. I've heard of a couple. Don't ask me to say who. I wouldn't say who anyway on air. But
yeah, well, a lot of programs and a lot of literary magazines have been around since that 50s and 60s era. Things like the Gettysburg Review and Green Mountain, I think, and other places. Yeah.
Yeah, they're getting jettisoned. It's like a plane going down and people throwing weight out of the plane trying to keep it in the air. So that's why I think we're coming at the bottom of the curve right now for that, and maybe it'll come back up a little bit and start equalizing out, which is what I always predicted, was that it would do this swing and then level out. I have seen in submissions, I don't know how your submissions have been, but my submissions have been either noticeably better, not necessarily better, but they've been more consistently good than bad. Where they were getting really bad there for a while. Now, I don't know if it just got to be so many people flooding us with submissions that we were thinking we were getting a lot of good stuff, or there was some effect of these writing programs to just getting more people writing. So I don't know. So I wrote the book, and I came up with I realized it's kind of a halfway there conclusion, but it really is what I felt after I did the research with a really go-hung advisor that wanted me to tear them apart. And it did tear apart enough, because when I went for my thesis defense, the dean of the school said, well, you've destroyed all of academia. Tell us what you want to do. How proud you are of yourself.
Well, Tony Glogler's here, and he mentions, and this is another big part of the book, that besides the pyramid scheme, you get lost in this little haven that is too far removed from the actual world and further narrows the audience and subject matter. And in a way, I come from a science background in college, and the same thing happened in the sciences, where the fields get narrower and narrower as more people populate them. And the same kind of publisher parish model that governs anything else in the academic world affects journals too. And there's pay-to-play journals where there's submission fees, and they don't really vet anything. And it's just this like scattershot of stuff where even within a field of science, so many people don't have time to read all the things that are published within their own field, let alone things slightly tangential that might be interesting. And there's a way that the volume is sort of it narrows down your focus on what you can do at the same time. And so that happens in creative writing too, where we get so focused on the world that we're living in, and you don't get those people outside of that world, like Tony Glogler mentions, and a poet you've published, I should add.
Yeah. Oh, Tony, he knows. Yeah, that's the kind of people we're looking for, is Tony Gloglers of the world. Yeah, the publisher parish mandate just really, you got to sit at your desk and think of a poem. That's the whole missing the muse part. The muse should get you going, get your belly going, get your head going. Get you excited. You have to bold everybody over to get home to write it down. But sitting there coming up with a poem just to try to get it published somewhere so that you can keep your job, that stinks. There's something else I was going to say, and I forgot it.
To push it further, like what is the answer to that? What is it that we can do to find the muse again? If having to publish and having just the idea of a lot of volume publication being something that's how we approach poetry. I mean, so many people start writing poems because they had positive feedback on poems and they want more positive feedback. And then they get into this, thing. There's whole hierarchy of literary magazines where everyone's like a notch on your bedpost that you can add to your bio and your CV. And it becomes a sort of game of where can you put the most poems, the most places. And we lose sight of that thing, that spark that drives us to create in the first place. And how do we get that back? How do we find the muse again?
Well, there's two parts. There's the craft and there's the muse. They've done a pretty good job of teaching craft. That's why we're seeing better poems, I think, is the craft part is getting taught. So it makes them a little better because they get the craft put into it. But the whole other half of it is the muse. And the muse can't really be taught. That's why it got dropped in the beginning, was the demystification of poetry. They had to demystify it to codify it because they can't teach the mystical aspects of the muse. And it's really not a mystery, but the way you teach it is tangentially looking at it through stewardship, number one. Stewardship is probably one of the greatest aspects to look at it through. And another aspect is not jump the gun to write everything right away. Let some ideas come to you before forcing the ideas out. What was it Bukowski said? It should come out like a hot beer turd in the morning. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, he also said, I was going to say, there's a quote in the book that poetry is so dull because it's so practiced, is one of the things he said. Right. I always mention this, but his tombstone says, don't try. And I think that's one of the things that I think about all the time, because really that willful will, that trying too hard to produce something is what allows you to, it disconnects your access. To me, it's the two hemispheres of the brain. I think when you say craft versus the muse, I think the left hemisphere versus the right. And the left is all the tools we learn to communicate and all the things, over centuries of studying writing and communication in that way through the music of speech. We've learned so many tools over the years, like using imagery, using fresh metaphors that stimulate neural activity, show, don't tell, let the voice be an experience rather than just the, telling what happened and what happened. So all those things that we can do, leaping through all of the craft things, that's really the things that the left hemisphere can learn. But the right hemisphere is that subconscious part we don't articulate, but has all those, subtle connections between everything that we, see and grab from the world. And it sees that holistic view. And that's where creativity actually comes from. So if you have too much of the craft, you end up, it's almost like you can fake the muse part because you're so good at the craft, I think that happens very often. And it's, it's sometimes you can't tell, it's easy to pass off a poem that doesn't have that deeper aspect to it, whatever mysterious thing that is.
Yeah, that was the essence of my book, trying to get to that piece of what is it. I even asked the question in Greek, what is it, to T? What is it? And toe without T is what is it? But when you put toe with T, it's what is it, like to seek out what it is by following from the stump, every root out to the tiniest hair-like root of the tree. Yeah, so I think you're right. I think there is some of that going on that very unconsciously going on. But yeah, there's just not enough venues, not enough good venues to get enough people out. I mean, there's so many people I want to publish that I just can't. I can only do so many books at a time.
Yeah.
And I'm so far behind now.
Yeah, I mean, that's a problem too. I mean, with the volume of people that are, really talented because they've learned all that craft. And the truth is too about people. We mentioned this a little bit before. But everybody is interesting. That's the thing that makes poetry to me so fascinating, is if when people sort of get out of their own way and aren't trying too hard to sound poetic. So everybody has a fascinating story, something that's deep inside of them that wants to speak. And so as they learn to let it out, we're sort of flooded with that too. So tell us about what it's like to publish both New York Quarterly and the books. For me, when I'm reading submissions, it feels to me like I'm like an authenticity detector. I mean, it feels like what you're doing when you're reading is just listening for the hum of truth, and you can feel the hum of truth kind of in your gut. Like there's something inside where it's the subconscious speaking, and I think our one subconscious hears the other. It's those two solitudes touching, and you can kind of hear that. So for me, it's like I'm just flipping through the submissions, waiting to hear where that voice of honesty has come out. Is that your experience too? Like, is it something? I think it's something that I think it's something that we always have inside us. I think everybody has that like sense of what's true, like that non-verbal sense of connection that you have, that feeling at the top of your head coming off or whatever. But then I think as an editor, we tune to that and tighten it up so we can recognize it really quickly and easily. Maybe is how it works. Is that your experience?
It's practice.
Yeah.
Years and years of practice. Bill used to call it the bullshit detector.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
He would be that's what he was looking for. And it gets to the point, and people are going to react to this, but it's true. I can read a poem, the first couple lines, know I'm going to accept it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's totally true.
I will generally go through it and finish it, even if I don't think I'm going to take it, because it might turn and do something nice by the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to miss it. But I generally know in the first couple of lines. It's amazing.
Yeah, the metaphor I use, I feel like it's like flipping through an old radio dial, like one of those analog tuners, and you're just like static. Oh, there's music, and it's music as soon as you hear. You don't have to be told, oh, this is a music station. It's just self-evident that there's music in this poem, and then there is sort of more you can publish, and some things are gray areas, and it's sort of some decisions sort of on the fringe to me. But then a lot of it is just like, okay, well, there's one, and then it's just over in a second,
Well, I get so excited sometimes when I find something that just really sings to me, and is different, and is informative, and is just wonderful. Can I go ahead and read Grace's poem?
Yeah, that'd be great. I was just thinking that. You read my mind, Raymond. I was thinking because I asked if you could share a poet that you think is deserves more attention, and you mentioned Grace. So let's hear one of hers.
This is from Details of Domestic Science Fiction 3 by Grace Zabriskie. When tree sex scums a windowsill, this condition is best remedied by musings, long leanings out the window while being gently fucked from behind. In this organic method of windowsill cleaning, elbows are employed, grease has its place, and all materials involved, inescapably, ultimately, biodegradable. Be creative. Variations are feasible, limited only by imagination. Immediately available furniture and the size of the window aperture.
And that was Grace Zabriskie. Another great poem. And to me, too, when I got to this poem, like when you get to that line, when tree sex scums a windowsill, I mean, like you were saying, immediately there,
right.
It's going to be a great poem.
Right there at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
When I read her packet of poems, that was the first one I pulled out, and I immediately took the entire packet. And then we did a book, and it was early on in doing the books. And Bill had always wanted to do the books, but couldn't get a financially viable way to do it until print on demand started coming out in 2009. So we started doing the books, and hers was one of the very first books I wanted to print because I was getting so much good stuff. I can't put it all in the magazine. I can put it all into a book.
Mm-hmm. So tell us what you love about this poem in particular. I mean, I could talk about it for a while. There are a lot of stuff I love about it too. Interesting too. We talked about centering poems on a recent um, critique of the week, I guess, and it's one of the rare poems that's centered. But it doesn't really matter. It works really, really well. But tell us what you love about this.
Yeah, I first was taken aback with this again. I look at it, I see it centered. I have an immediate reaction to that, but then I look at the first line when tree sex comes a windowsill. You know,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's the
it's
same.
like
It's the same reaction for me. Like you have this heuristic because most people who center their poems don't understand that that's not something that's usually done. So it's a sign that they haven't read much contemporary or even traditional poetry. It's not something traditionally that you would do. So it's really easy as a little shortcut. But then immediately in a first second, the voice of those first two lines cuts right through that heuristic and says, no, no, this is a real poem and you have to listen. And so we do.
exactly, and the centering works well with how she paces the enjambment with the involved, inescapably, ultimately biodegradable. She has that rhythm right there that just works so well. She doesn't center all of her poems
Mm-hmm.
by any stretch of the imagination, but this was definitely centered for her voice. Her voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's what it comes down to is have letting, I wouldn't even say having a distinct voice, but allowing the innate distinct voice that everybody has as like an idiosyncratic soul to actually be presented and freely flowing from the page. So you have the original image here in the concept of the poem, and then it moves playfully through the rest of the lines in a way that just expands and expands on that in a voice that's so authentic that only one person could have written it, which is, I guess, what we're all looking for as editors.
Yeah, very much so.
Do you want to read her other book or other poem that you included?
Let's see. Do you want me to do evolution?
Sure. Is that hers too? Evolution. I don't think I have the
No,
evolution.
that's me.
Oh, okay. Well, do you want to do, since we're talking about Grace, want to do two old questions first?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Yeah, this is a good one. This is two old questions. If mysticism is the egg and religion the chicken, then clearly the egg came first, long before religion began crossing the road to leave the egg behind.
And again, that was two old questions by Grace Zabriskie. And so, how many books of hers did you publish? Is it one? Yeah. So what was
We're
that?
hoping to get another one soon. We're working with her to collect some poems now.
So what's that experience like of having a book that you really love? I mean, obviously, we've heard already that you love her work a lot. And then trying to get it out in the world and get readers in this world where most of the readers are also writers and, books don't really sell. How has that gone and how do you confront that?
It goes slowly, taking tiny chips off the block everywhere you go. And the problem is I have 250 other poets that books have published that I love equally as much as this book. And, I can bring one person on today with me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just a practicality of time, space, and money, and what you can do and who can yell the loudest, right? And I scream at the top of my lungs for these people, for their books. I really hate doing contests like book contests. I really can't. I mean, I'm supposed to pick the one book I liked the best. I liked all of them the best.
Mm-hmm.
I published, 16 books last year. I liked all of them, or I wouldn't have published them.
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah, it is amazing. I think that it stands out nowhere else for us than the chapbook contest. Where we have every year 2,000 or so chapbooks submitted to us, and then we pick three, and there are so many that are. I mean, it's a small percentage of the total pool, but there's 30 or 40 books that it would be just amazing to publish. And so it shows back to what we were talking about before, just the tremendous number of poets out there who are making great poems at the same time as readership declines because of the, economic influences of the whole world that we're living in.
I'm not sure readership is declining. I think it's just not there. I mean, it's an interior echo chamber. The poetry world is an echo chamber for family and friends. I mean, I remember one poet canceling his reading because he didn't none of his family or friends could show up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was still an audience there, but his family and friends couldn't show up. So,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't want to read.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's just tough. So how do we break through that? I mean, that's something I've been trying to do my whole 20 years of me doing this. You've been doing everything that you do for so long too. Is there anything that you've found that does take hold? Because the one thing for me that does seem to work is encouraging people to write poems, and having,
Yes.
Workshops and encouraging. That's why we do things like the Ekphrastic Challenge that encourages people to write, and encouraging people who haven't written before through the, prison programs and things like that we do, because once you sort of unlock that thing in yourself where you have access to your subconscious, I think it's easier to appreciate seeing that in other people maybe. And so I think that's one way. But then the problem with that too is you still get that Ouroboros effect of eating ourselves, because if you make new readers by making new poets, then you still have as many poets as readers. There's no way out of that loop.
Right.
Have you had a book that had had a wider reach than normal, that got outside of that echo chamber of poetry? We've had, I think, The Plumber's Guide to Light, and which was what's his name, Jesse Bertrand, and then also Michael Mark's book about visiting my mother in Queens is more enlightening than a month in a monastery in Tibet, because those both had topics. The Plumber's Guide to Light, anybody who had like a brother who like was some kind of blue collar type plumber-ish job ended up like giving them the book, and so we sold a lot of extra books that way. And then everybody has parents that are getting older too, and so it was a great book on Michael Mark's book to get through that to people who were going through that experience. So they both became kind of gift books. So that's one maybe avenue I can see working. Have you found anything like that or anything else?
We've had a number of books do very well, but they've stayed, as far as we can tell, they've stayed kind of within the community. Grace's book got out into the film community of Hollywood because she was a part of that community.
Mm-hmm.
I really have to think it through to think of somebody who's really broken. I mean, so many of our books could break those norms,
Mm-hmm.
but they just don't get enough exposure.
Yeah.
I mean, um, one thing that's helping, honestly, is the internet. I think putting NYQ online is terrific because where we used to have, let's say, 1,000 subscribers, now we have thousands of readers
Mm-hmm.
who will see that poem. It will come up on searches, and that's where it'll start hitting outside the echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
Is where it comes up on searches, and yeah, well, the other thing I was thinking about was I can't remember now.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, because it plays into the poetic amusement concept, is criticism of poetry. There's a way we were watching the Academy Awards with Katie on whatever that was, like last weekend, and she mentioned that nobody is like catty about the outfits anymore, which makes it a little boring because everybody's so nice to each other. And she says, like, in years past on that red carpet, there used to be like, like, what, oh my God, what is she wearing? That kind of made it fun. And it made me think about the way that that's happened in poetry too, where there's, because of this thing that you were talking about in Poetic Amusement and Packard was worried about back in 1969, because everybody is tied to an institution and everybody is sort of playing this game within that multi-level marketing scheme, everybody is like a potential, I don't know, like a potential reference or a potential like person on a committee that might hire you or accept you for this, speaking gig or at this press. And it's just this little nexus of words where everyone's afraid to even criticize poetry. Like to the point where we're afraid to even say what's a poem and what's not. I mean, there's this concept that goes around that anything is a poem if the author called it a poem, as if like language weren't a negotiation about, the definitions of things. And it was just a statement of, everything, every noun is a proper noun or something. And so we have this world where we don't really have a criticism. There's not really much of a vibrant critical world within poetry. Everything is sort of I stopped publishing reviews on Rattle. We have like 600, I think, reviews, and just everything felt like a positive, book report on the poem or on the book. And there was no real vitality to it. And I think that lack of vitality makes people less interested in reading in the first place, I think. And do you think that's one of the problems that we're facing?
Oh, definitely one of the problems. We've been facing it for a while, but it's really gotten bad, and it's not even consciously incestuous, but it's I'll blurb your book if you review my book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
it's not even necessarily transactional in the beginning, but it turns into that.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it's because the community is so small. I should put it that way, so insular.
Yeah. It's just so weird that we're afraid to do that. I had a great interaction that was sort of surprising because I started blurbing books again for the first time in years. For like 10 years or so, I'd stopped saying that I would, because you get so many requests and you can't do them all. Then you have to say no to some people and it feels bad. And it's a really tough thing to negotiate. I decided to start doing it again though. And there was a book that somebody sent, I won't say who, but she sent the book here and I read it and I couldn't blurb it. It was so sort of hermetic and strange and I couldn't access it. I didn't even know what it was about really. And I said, well, I really can't blurb this. I'm sorry. It's like not really the kind of book we would publish or anything like that. And then she had such a graceful response that was like, yeah, this is a new style of poetry I'm trying. And I'm like that you felt that way because that's sort of what I was doing with this book. And it's really about this. And I said, oh, I didn't know it was about that, but that makes a lot of sense. And we had this really positive reaction, even though I was really saying like, I didn't like the book. And I think we need more of that too, where it's just like, we're being honest with each other about what we actually experience when we read things. I think we're afraid to do that.
Right. Yeah. I think most of the reviews I've seen are honest, but they're only honest positively. Mm-hmm. They just don't call out anything bad. Well, one thing is people are afraid to say what's bad and good nowadays. Mm-hmm. I mean, I make it clear that you don't fit the institutional voice of the magazine if we're rejecting you. Mm-hmm. Go get people together and publish somewhere else, or maybe you're getting close, but even I'm tend to stay away from saying, well, that was bad, Mm-hmm. And sometimes people just need to be told that's bad. That's not good.
Mm-hmm. Well, to me, what good? I'm curious what your good. How do you define good poetry? Because to me, I would say that there's no good and bad, but there's authentic and inauthentic, maybe.
Right. And I was saying.
Yeah, and like so, it's not only like that's bad, although it means the same kind of thing. because bad is like when you're faking it and not accessing something and being performative in a way that's only for the performance itself. I mean, there's a lot of ways you sort of go down that river, but it's
Right.
not speaking your inner voice, And I think that's the only thing that's bad, because stories are really interesting.
Because what's real interesting?
Well, just people's stories, if somebody's
Oh
being
yeah. Oh
honest,
no.
I
Yeah.
mean, I
People's
love,
stories. Yeah.
when my kids were really little, I'd sit at the playground and like talk to some of the other parents, and a lot of times, you couldn't get anything except for talking about like which diapers you were using or whatever. And then occasionally you would like cut through that and like have a real conversation. Like I talked to some a mother that really memorably who left Syria to try to start a business here, and she was talking about the difference between life in here and in Syria. And it was just one of the most fascinating conversations I've ever had. And if, we didn't cut through that first few minutes, it just wasn't there. And that's how I feel reading a lot of poems. It's like we're on this sort of surface level where we're sort of talking around things, but it's sort of talking about the weather until you cut in deeper. And I think there's always something interesting deeper too. So I don't know, but back to the question, like, how do you identify or define what's good or bad?
Basically, what hits me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's. I've been so practiced with the voice for this magazine for so long that I see it, I know it, and I mean, we don't take off points for spelling or messiness, or even if it's on paper or not. Um, it's just I see it, I know it. It fits the voice of the magazine. Sometimes I find poems that I like a lot that don't fit the voice of the magazine,
Mm-hmm.
that I wish I could publish. I mean, sincerely wish I could publish, and have actually thought about starting another magazine online to accommodate one aspect of those poems that I'm seeing come tons in, that we just can't deal with publishing them all.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to, you know.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, especially for me
I
on the.
mean, what I was saying
Mm-hmm.
about bad and good
Yeah.
is bad is really people who are performative and just the thing about make it new, make it new. Pound's dictum of make it new. This is what they've been taught in MFA programs. Make it new, but make it new doesn't mean make it dumb or make it silly or make it just ridiculous. Make it new means make it fresh, and more importantly, it means if you really work your way through the characters, the Chinese characters, because he got it from a Chinese Tang Dynasty person. If you really look at it, it's really make it yours. Make it yours, so you don't have to do something just wacky and silly, but you can. That's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like some of those people need to be told it's bad.
Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure we get through the poems you sent of yours too. So let's do the next one. Let's do Evolution, which is a prose poem. So very different than the others we've seen so far today.
Evolution. We could only take the boat so far up the side canyon from the Pecos River until we had to beach it on the sandstone of the canyon floor, tying it to a nearby dark gray limestone boulder. The trail was not a trail at all, but an old stream bed that allowed us our own individual maneuvers around boulders and rocks, ocotillo trees, and the barbed cholla cacti and rattlesnakes. The heat everywhere, feeling like cake batter must feel in an easy bake oven, the light itself being the heat, the light itself being everywhere. Yet the cool shade of the crookedly growing mesquite trees that were randomly and sparsely placed were our savior as we walked and walked until reaching this grove of trees at the narrowing of two towering cliff faces, creating the head of the box of the canyon, We approach the oasis much like Santiago first approached Alpha M and the alchemist, skeptical that any place of such refreshing beauty could exist. It continued getting cooler as we pushed through the bushes until the creek bed opened to a beautiful blue pool at the base of the waterfall, dripping like life was being filmed in slow motion, dripping into the pool, dripping from a small stream above, dripping like water dripping down the lines of a cheap plastic living room fountain, dripping through a massive maidenhair fern that hung like the gardens in Babylon. The green cascading from the precipice above, dropping time into the big blue pool below, weeping like a miraculous Mother Mary statue, each drop its own voice crying into a chorus of here, crying into a chorus of crying for lost moments. On the canyon wall is the negative handprint of another human who stood here and heard the dripping of the metronome and watched the water drip, drip, drip through this rock into this canyon where they, being 4,000-year-old graffiti artists, took red ochre paint and drew it into a straw and broken brown reed and blew it around their right hand, stenciling the handprint to the wall that I apply my hand to, that my hand fits, and hundreds of lifetimes dissolve through my fingers like chocolate.
Yeah, a lot of energy in that poem. Great last line. It was Evolution by Raymond Hammond, a prose poem, and take a deep breath and a sip of water after reading that one for sure. So what is your writing process like, Raymond? How do you even find time to write at all, given how many hats you wear, how many different things you have to do? I imagine, I think you've retired, right, from the work you used to do with the Statue of Liberty like a while ago.
Right.
So do you find more time now for that, or I just don't know how you fit it
No,
all in?
I find less time. I just um, I just filled out the chair of an editor. But I still have time. I still get ideas, and of the 100 ideas I get a day, I will get one down in notes and maybe expand upon it. I write down so much that gets thrown away, rightfully so, because it's not good.
Hmm.
But then there's those that hit and they just spark, and I just kind of let it find its own thing and do its own thing, man. I just let it go, and then try to form it, try to like dough, try to knead it and form it,
Hmm.
and then wind up letting it go. Like this poem, this was one of the first prose poems that I've done recently. Um, Came about, and it came about because I like to write in syllabics. Um, because it kind of forces some word choices and some line lengths and et cetera, et cetera. But this couldn't be forced into syllabics. It
Hmm.
didn't work as a free verse poem. It just only existed on the page as a prose poem. I select my syllabic count by what it fits into.
Hmm. So tell me more about that, because it's interesting. For that poem, for Evolution, you can really hear and feel the muse going on there, as there's this sort of like rush of energy coming out of the poem that sort of can't be stopped. But then with syllabics, you're so focused on counting syllables, which is not something in the French. It's a syllable timed language, and you can hear the syllable a little more clearly, which is why there's so many syllabic forms in French. But in English, it's more of a background feel. Like you don't really hear it, so it's something you have to pay attention to, like outside of the voice. So how do you? It's interesting. I understand that's what A.E. Stalling said about her syllabic poems, that it forces different choices, and that's why she liked it. But how do you find the muse within a structure like that, where you're using so much of that other part of that mathematical side of your mind?
Um, the muse part does its job and gets onto paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see if it stays that way, which it never does. But I start crafting it, and then I'll be like, well, wait a minute. These two lines, work well together. What happens if I do that down here? Oh, that works. Now what happens if I start putting it together in the middle? So the muse doesn't really bring me the form. I mean, it happens inside the poem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not what fits, it's what, well, it becomes what fits after you've done maybe 3/4 of the poem. But you do it, and it is that background. It is a background meter uh, that's really, I like it because of that. And you force it into, you force in particular words or lose particular words, or like articles. Get rid of a lot of articles that way.
Mm-hmm.
Doing that, because that's just a wasted syllable.
Well, let's see. If anybody has any questions for Raymond, please leave them in the chat windows on Facebook or YouTube, and I'll pass them along. We probably have time for about 2 more poems, Raymond. Do you want to read?
Sure.
Yeah. Do you want to read F Train next, and then we'll do some more
Yeah.
talk and then another poem?
Yeah, that's a good one to do now. F Train. The giant silver earthworm lumbers out of its hole, emerging just south of the Carroll Street station, and climbs up the modern steel erector set that is the old Culver Viaduct, up and up and up toward the Smith and 9th Street station at its zenith, a roller coaster's painful climax, as it rends the veil of God's sunlight. Its windows act like a zoetrope, casting shadows between rays of light onto reflective silver crosses atop dilapidated steeples that once served to draw eyes to heaven.
Yeah, beautiful poem there, F Train. I love that, especially that first image, the giant silver earthworm lumbers out of its hole, emerging just south of the Carroll Street station. Yeah, great music in that poem.
This poem,
mm-hmm.
I went back and counted it when I first read it aloud. I had been working on it for 27 years.
Oh, wow.
I first got the image and the first couple of lines 27 years before finishing the poem.
Mm-hmm. So
don't be afraid to let things linger.
Yeah, for sure. Well, looking at the questions from the audience here. First, some follow-ups and things from what we've been talking about. Ted Guevara asks, do you publish poems strictly on poetic merit? No bio, no credit, or reputation needed? That's an interesting question these days.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yes, absolutely. The only thing we do that I don't like is we charge for submissions right now. And that was a deal with a board member that insisted that we do that for a while. Mm-hmm. I'm removing it as soon as I can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I really hate them. And yeah, no, we don't publish on, I don't even look at the bios
mm-hmm.
when I'm looking at a poem. I look at the poem and that's that.
Yeah, and one of the things too about the bios, I mean, and we don't either, but I think you can probably attest to this. It's the opposite of what people assume. But when you do, after you read the poem, look who it is, and then if you see something that's like, oh, this person has an MFA degree, or like, oh, this is a really well-known poet, there's less joy in that than, oh, I have no idea who this is, or this is the first poem they've ever published. I mean, that's the thing that we're looking for. Like, I love it. There's nothing more than when I look at it and I say, oh, who the heck is this person? I can't even Google and find them. It's amazing. Like, those are the things that you are proud of. And it's so the idea that the credits, I mean, maybe some places the credits would be helpful or as a vetting process or something. But when you're just reading the poems as an editor, it's the opposite for me.
Yeah, it's the exact opposite for me too. A couple months ago, I had one that, I really fell in love with, and then I read the bio, and she goes, I'm a 11th grade student at such and such a school. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, this is really nice. This is really nice. I mean, she's really staying caught up with the adults there. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I mean, it's really nice, and it was really good to pick that poem based on the merit of the poem, not on anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And PMB says if the bios didn't matter, they would not be asked for, which is exactly why we don't ask for bios. There's two questions. Paul Mitchell Bernstein and also Chelsea McClellan had sort of similar questions about that idea of like fitting the voice of the magazine. So Chelsea wanted to know what are some of the aspects of poems that don't fit in the voice of the magazine that are making you wish for another magazine to house them. So what are the aspects of that? And then Paul Mitchell Bernstein wanted to know too, why is it that you want to have a consistent voice like that? So there's sort of two questions about that voice that you were talking about for the magazine.
Okay, let's back up and go. You mentioned something in the last person's question. Then why do you have the bios then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Really, I quite honestly, is to see how we might interact with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's really basically it. I mean, because we don't read them beforehand. But if we're considering something and then we look at the bio and there's really something really off in the bio, we deal with some wacky people.
That's true.
And I read the bios for that. You know, most of the bios are straightforward and clear, and I look at the list of publications and it drives me nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you too.
Because I don't care whether you've been published before or not,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or
yeah,
where.
exactly. Yeah.
But
What
it's
about?
also interesting
Mm-hmm.
to find in the bios that I'll commonly see rattle,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, I'm on the right track here.
Yeah, exactly. And we see the NYQ books too. It's a nice thing to see.
So now
So what about that? About
the
the
voice.
voice? Why have a consistent voice, and what doesn't fit the voice for the magazine?
What doesn't fit the voice
Yeah.
is extreme academic, sterilized poems um, that are just cookie cutter that could be written by anybody
Mm-hmm.
or anybody from a particular school. Well, this is not so bad now, but back when I wrote my book, we used to sit there at screening sessions. There's another reason to get bios, and we would guess. We would read the submission and guess what school they were from,
Mm-hmm.
and you could do that. You could guess that they were from this MFA program or that MFA program. Um, but you want a consistent voice because you want to keep, you're serving a segment of the population, and you want to continue to serve that segment of the population. If you broaden that voice out and we start taking just some completely mundane poems or completely sterilized poems or completely over the top poems, or it's going to turn us into every other magazine.
Mm-hmm.
You want to stand out. You stand out by your voice, just as you stand out as a poet as your voice.
Yeah. Well, that's really well said.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah.
Well, let's wrap it up with one last poem, Raymond. What do you want to close with?
Um, let's do 14th Street.
Okay.
It's a good short one. Sitting at 14th and Broadway, staring up at steeple on Grace Church, I often wonder if Pascal smoked, contemplating spires, watching smoke rise like wagering thoughts in white bursts of heat, climbing crockets until field of vision diminishes to point of vanishment from Earth cross, perched on pyramid, sight passes infinity, streaming stratosphere, into nothingness of space and on and on and on, directly to void of sound, color, and reason, uncrossed by paths until it reaches outer limits of understanding and intuitively arrives at same spark and electric thought that is the origin of our soul.
Yeah, that is definitely a great poem to close on, given the talk about, just writing from that muse perspective that we've been talking about. But before we go, Raymond, what do you have sort of planned in the future for NYQ and NYQ Books? Is there something, any kind of shifts or changes, or is it rolling along as it has for such a long time?
No, well, we're going to roll along basically as we have. I would really like to get into education more,
Mm-hmm.
because I think you're exactly right on that, that's the better way to reach people, or a better way to reach people. I want to button up things. I need to button it up financially and editorially, because quite honestly, I have Parkinson's and I know my time is limited.
Mm-hmm.
Before, my time was not limited, but now it is. Um,
Do you have who's going to take it over, like a succession plan in place yet?
yeah, we have a list of people who I approved, who studied with me as an intern for years and years, who could come in and take it over. So that's the first person, that's the first people the board has to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there's a person at the top of that list. Um, and I'm not going to say her name. She knows who she is.
Uh-huh.
But she's been working with me for 4 or 5 years now, and will continue to work with me. And she's getting all the ins and outs of all the crappy stuff you don't want to do, like sales taxes.
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah, that stuff's no fun for sure.
yeah, so we are looking at, and I'm excited because I said she. I'm excited to see where this kind of predominantly male-oriented journal, very male-oriented, even though it did have a lot of female poets in it, wonderful female poets, goes with a female voice. I would
Mm-hmm.
like to see what she adds to that editorial voice that keeps it unique, but expands it in the way she wants to expand it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that sounds great. And yeah, well, thanks so much for being a guest today, Raymond. It's been a pleasure talking to you, learn more about NYQ, and going back to Poetic Amusement and introducing some people to it for the first time. Hope people check that book out, and of course, all of the wonderful stuff you do at New York Quarterly Press, New York Quarterly Books, and all the things that you do. We're gonna have another book too. The Gerald Lachlan New and Selected. Clint Margaret is going to be on next month.
Yes.
Another NYQ book, in tribute to Jerry Lachlan, who passed away last year or 2 years ago. So look forward to that too, about a month. But thanks for having me here, Raymond. It's been great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take care. And there was Raymond Hammond once again, the editor-in-chief of both New York Quarterly and NYQ Books. You can find all of his work at raymondhammond.com. That's raymondhammond.com. Now we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was a simple one. It was to write a short poem that explores someone else's awe. And we don't really have a definition of how short a short poem is, so feel free to, include any poem length you really think. You can, for some people, a short poem is still pretty long for other people. Whatever you want to share, but after talking last week to James Cruz about awe and the awe of his partner's awe, we're going to have poems that explore awe, someone else's awe. So that's going to be the prompt lines. If you'd like to participate, go to the chat windows either on Facebook or YouTube and join us there. Only if you'd like to share a poem, though. Email your poem first to promptlines. That's promptlines, all one word, at rattle.com, promptlines@rattle.com. Email it there so I can show it on screen as you read. And otherwise, though, sit tight right where you are and just sit back and listen, because YouTube or Facebook or X, where you're listening now, watching, is the best place because you get to see the poems too. So sit right where you are, and I'll be right back with more poetry. And we're back. I told you it was a short break, and we have our prompt poems editor here today, along with possibly our future prompt poems editor, her daughter Lizzie. Hey, Katie, how you doing?
Hi, we have managed to find the one area in Vegas that is not populated, which is by the landline telephone.
Ah, very interesting. Thanks for modeling that, Lizzie. So you're in Las Vegas. You and Lizzie are going to go see a Cirque du Soleil show. You guys excited?
We are very excited. We are, but we could not miss calling in. And in fact, Lizzie also wrote a poem.
I know. Well, with that introduction, I think I have to go with her poem first, probably. Was this a prompt poem?
This is a prompt poem because it came up somewhat organically and somewhat me suggesting she do it because she started to draw something as a prompt for me. And then I wrote a new prompt poem based on that. And then I said, hey, why don't you write a prompt poem? So it was a prompt poem palooza on the plane to Vegas.
On the plane. Well, you had a nice flight, so I'm glad you got to make the most out of that. So, Lizzie, you're going to read this poem live on the air, huh?
Okay, remember to speak up clear, okay? Here it is. Here's your poem.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, go ahead.
The fog. I saw my little sister in mommy's way, so I hopped in to help. She giggled and giggled. She has a speech delay, but repeated with it.
Yay! Good job.
Oh, that is a great poem. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Lizzie. It's too bad the deadline for the Young Poets Anthology has passed, but maybe for next year.
And she's already been published in it.
She has already. Yeah, last year's Young Poets Anthology for the My Scooter Goes Down the Hill Fast. Yeah, well, thanks so much for sharing that, Lizzie. It's great. I'm so glad you wrote a prompt poem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And also say thank you to the house.
Thank you to the house phone. Glad you exist and that nobody cares.
What is this? What is this?
I'm really surprised that you found it at all.
Yeah, well, it's a great prank calling scenario we have set up for us.
It is. All right. So you have a prompt poem too. What do you want to share?
I'm going to share my poem now, okay? I am going to share, so I had a different hyphen. I wrote another hyphen on the plane. And I should say beforehand, if in case anybody doesn't know what a double rainbow baby it is, this is a double rainbow baby. We're sitting right, and it is a baby born after two back-to-back losses. And Lizzie is a double rainbow baby. Yeah, it's important for the title. Got to get that hyphen cut in there. All right. Double rainbow baby. Son, I wish I could tell you that I always believed in the stardust of this comet. You, 7 years old, beside me on a plane, drawing dragons. Once upon a time, I ran out of hope, a restaurant with no more crayons in the corner. But now, how you turn the pages in a frenzy to keep up with all that brain, a flower you plucked from the concrete outside to craft, a purple unicorn's confetti mane, 30,000 feet. So the haiku is, sun in the corner, 30,000 feet.
Oh, very sweet braided haiku there, or braided hyphen there. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Katie. Thanks for taking the time.
So that's important. You can tell she had chocolate milk with dinner tonight.
Definitely. Sounds good. Well, hope you guys both enjoy the show, and I'll see you tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to watching back. And I'm sorry that we missed some of it, but Lizzie is very interested as well. So thanks.
Excellent. Well, thanks. Yep. Take care. Have fun.
Bye.
Bye. That was Katie Dozier and Lizzie Dozier Moshman with some prompt poems. And now let's see. Oh, wait, I have my prompt poem too. And so my poem, I took the small poem pretty seriously. I was thinking about a moment, and this flashed into my head, this memory out of nowhere. So it's a very tiny poem for a very tiny memory, but it stuck there. I remember this expression on this kid's face very strongly. So here's my little poem about awe of someone's awe. Here we go. It's called Small Prayer. Small prayer. Let us look at each day like the child in his chair, watching Chamberlain walk through a cheesecake factory on Sepulveda. Let our days be as long as those strides. And it was true. We're just sitting there at the Cheesecake Factory, and walk. It's in L.A., so of course this happens sometimes. And Wilt Chamberlain just walks by like he's like stepping over the tables, and there was this little kid in a high chair just beaming up at him. It was a really cool little tiny memory. And two, we should all have so much joy. Anyway, that is my prompt poem for this week. Let's see what everybody else has. And first, let's go to Mark Grenier, who is right here, kind of first in line for the first time. Hey, Mark. Very quick on the trigger that day. Oh, but not on the unmute. Here you go.
Like
There you go. Hey.
if my thing would unmute when I click on it, it would work.
Well, good to see you, Mark.
I'm
Thanks
amazed that I'm first. Okay, this is a memory of childhood here also. So it's called "I Sit in Awe." Remember a young boy running through an eastern woods in America, running for the joy of it, not because he had to, leaving the troop of Boy Scouts hiking back from the back country, returning to camp in an orderly queue, enjoying the interplay of shade and sunlight, the coolness of breezes, zephyrs of summer lifting their spirits, his spirit, until he can no longer stay with his friends, this troop of scouts marching together, but must try to fly, following the path back that they hiked out on, but going full speed, alone, leaping over rocks and branches, speeding past vistas and tight groves of trees darkening as the sun descends behind him in the west. The glory of it, the joy of it, to be the first to return, minutes, a half hour, an hour before the rest, with time to stop on the way, shoot small clay pigeons with 22 shot shells among strangers gathered together for a while, tying knots, then flying away into whatever surprise came next, and next, as he ran through the woods, the joy of his unimaginably awesome jamboree, the joy of this unimaginably awesome jamboree day, remembered now from a singular distance, as so very, very long ago and far away.
Oh, that was great. Love the images and the details there. I sit in awe. Thanks for sharing that, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mark Grenier with I Sit in Awe. And next is Dick Westheimer.
Oh, I tried to get in later today, so I wouldn't go so early. But
Well, I don't know. I guess slow for you is, I don't know, maybe it's your internet connection or something out
that could
there.
be. I'm like those flash boys, the folks closest to the trading desk.
Oh, yeah, I remember that an article. Yeah, I forgot about that. Where they have like the distance of the wire is actually significant for like the volume, quick trading or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so here it is. Put the economics of poetry reading. I'm not sure what that is. I love this little prompt. I love the challenge of a short poem, and I tried to aim for under 100 words, but I couldn't quite make that.
Well,
that
that
limit.
definitely counts as short for you, though, I think.
Yeah, it did. So I did send it to you. Do you have it right there?
Yep, I do.
Okay, and just a brief, like something you might look up would be the Hubble constant, which is the number that the astrophysicist Edwin Hubble came up with to represent the rate of expansion of the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's more fun than that now with James Webb Telescope. I confirmed the Hubble constant from home in Ohio. Deb left yesterday. She stays in a cottage just an hour to the east. Alone, she types into her phone. By day, she explores a woodland of beech and old oak. The creek talks with her on the paths she makes by walking them. At night, she holds the sky to her like she would a basket of river glass. I imagine she runs her fingers through that collection of lustrous stones, cups, handfuls, and flings them back into space. How can I miss you, she texts, when I have the dark to keep me company? I am here, and she is out there, receding into the quiet companionship of her retreat. This is how I know the universe continues to expand.
Oh, beautiful ending there. I confirm the Hubble constant from home in Ohio. Yeah, beautiful poem. Thanks for sharing that, Dick.
Thanks all.
Yep, take care.
Bye.
Yeah, it's Dick Westheimer once again. Next, let's go to, I'm going to go back to the line here. A lot of poets in here. I'm glad they're short poems this week. Joe Cottonwood is next. Hey, Joe.
Hi, I just emailed you a fresh version of the poem I want to read. If you'll It's called Number Two.
Yep,
All.
I got the number 2. Yep, got
Cool.
here already.
I made it shorter.
Okay, very good.
Somehow I missed the word short when I was reading the prompt.
Yeah, I think I might have left it out one place I posted. I think on the daily poem, I think I left out the short. So if anybody didn't see that and has a longer one, it's my fault, not yours. But anyway, that's okay. It's not long. It's a subjective definition anyway.
Well, good. Okay, here goes.
Okay.
She is the lover of my good friend, sunbathes in her garden, is 72 years old, invites me to join her after his funeral beneath blossoming wisteria, has a bony body, says, "You see how ugly I am? He treated me like treasure. He was blind that way. In Florida, he was an air traffic controller. His wife, her body, he worshipped until one day he found her in flagrant delicto. Often he repeated that term, out of control with his best friend. He wrote the best pornography, mailed it to New York. They paid him pennies and they made millions. He could describe desire for a woman. You could feel his awe. He could write an entire page about some woman's nostrils. He never understood how his wife could delicto his best friend. He could never comprehend that the woman who believes in her heart, who constantly demands she is worthy of love, is worthy of awe, is not.
Oh, really? Heartbreaking poem.
Sorry.
Great performance of it, too. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing
Through
that,
the
Joe.
last line, I'm sorry. But, oh, well.
Yeah, well, beautiful poem. Thanks for sharing it, Joe. Yeah, it's Joe Cottonwood with She is the Lover of My Good Friend. And next we will go to Stephen Croft.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Stephen. Yeah, great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Like Dick, I wanted to look up, and many humans have considered the moon. There's Dorian Lox's Facts About the Moon, for example. So I thought about who has considered the moon the longest.
Mm-hmm.
So I came up with this. It's called Moon and Sphinx. I wait nights for what is older than me, kinder than the sun's burning eye. Mystery is my queen, the moon, subtle and alluring, never falling like the burnout stars, only shrinking and growing. It is the heartbeat of our constant nocturnal witness. And though ever above me, shaped by higher hands, in my stone dream, my mistress metaflowers, descends, rests gently between my carved paws, though my sedimentary heart knows this can never be.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Stephen. I was trying to pull it up and I couldn't get to it in time. What was the title again?
Moon and Sphinx.
Moon and Sphinx. Yeah, very cool. And a great topic for a poem of awe, too. Thanks for sharing it.
Thank you.
Yep, that was Stephen Croft with Moon and Sphinx. And now we have a special surprise guest here. Denise Duhamel is with us. She had appeared in Rattlecast number 86, and she has a Poet Respond poem tomorrow, a special bonus Poet Respond poem. Hi, Denise. How you doing?
Good. How are you? I love the last two poems that I've heard. I was working, so I just got here right now, but thank you for letting me join you at this last.
I'm so glad you could join. I mean, because you had a class that went, into when the show starts, so we didn't have your usual time, but we'd sneak you in as a surprise. It's a lot of fun. And it is the first Barbie poem you've written since Kinky, which is really fun to be able to share. I mean, that book is so influential for so many people. Katie Dozier is really sad she couldn't be here because she's on vacation today. But for her especially, she was telling me that book is like unlocked a whole kind of voice for her when she was appreciating poetry when she was younger. And so it's so cool to have a new Barbie poem. Tell us about it.
Thank you. Well, this is going to be in tomorrow in Poets Respond. And so I wrote a book called Kinky that came out in 1997 that was based on, it was a feminist look, I guess, feminist take and consumerism and racism and American ridiculousness, you know, with all through the eyes of a Barbie doll. And it came out in 1997. And I thought I was pretty much done with it. But Barbie turned 65 on May 9th. And so now she's eligible for Medicare. So I'm going to read this poem.
Yeah, that's a great poem. A great
So like
idea.
decades later, when I thought like I'd put her back in the box.
Yeah,
There
it's
you
a
go.
great way to get back into the voice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun. It was really, I just really didn't think I had any more in me, but I guess never say never. Okay, so this is called Poem in Which Barbie Qualifies for Medicare. Barbie never thought too much about her eligibility. She'd loved AARP, the discounts at Sunglass Hut and Outback Steakhouse, when she waved her bright red card. She'd been born to shop, but the medical world was still a mystery to her. Sure, one of her first careers was as a registered nurse, and a decade later, she became an MD. But she had little experience being a patient, except when children made her a papier-mâché arm cast or shaved off her hair in play chemo. Without vertebrae or femur, Barbie never took a bone density test or had to worry about osteoporosis. Menopause had been a breeze. No hot flashes, no bleeding to miss. She was spotless when it came to age spots, even after all those years in the sun. No pee when she sneezed, no cataracts, despite the fact that she never blinked. She still drove at night, was considering trading in her convertible for a cushy Lincoln Town Car to arrive in Medicare style for her annual checkups. She was looking forward to a ride in an MRI, then consulting a podiatrist to see if anyone could at last help ease her feet into New Balance sneakers. The dermatologist told her Botox was covered if Barbie suffered from migraines. Her smile had never given way to laugh lines or crow's feet. Still, Barbie lifted her hands to her temples and told a white lie. Why, yes, those headaches have sometimes been so fierce, I've had to retreat into my dark box to rest. After all, Barbie was an American boomer and wanted her fair share, what she thought she deserved, what was coming to her.
Yes, that was great. That was a poem in which Barbie qualifies for Medicare. Great,
Yes.
great turn back. And I was wondering, you know, when the Barbie movie came out, if we'd see more Barbie poems at some point from you. So that's really cool to see. Do you now that you got into the voice a little bit, do you think any more might come, or is it impossible to say?
Now I'm thinking like Social Security. I don't know. Like I really thought I had given it up, but maybe now that I'm back in there. Because like I'm really interested in like the aging bodies versus like the plastic, you know. I think so, maybe.
Yeah, well, that'd be really fun.
I'll see if I can go for it.
Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed. The retirement Barbie book would be really cool. Yeah.
It would be really fun. Yeah.
All right, well, thanks so much.
I don't know.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Denise. It's great to see you again, and a pleasure having this poem for tomorrow.
Thanking you. Thanks so much for taking it.
Yep. Take care.
You too.
Yeah, that was Denise Duhamel once again. You can find her interview on Rattlecast number 86 if you scroll back to that one. She's got something.
I got a copy right here.
That's issue number 83.
Oh, this is 83. You're right.
She's in the newest issue of Rattle 2, in the collaboration section, and the interview, of course, too, which I should have mentioned. But I was talking about Rattlecast number 83. You were on an interview.
That's
if you want, you can learn all about Denise and what she's been up to as of 2002, I guess that was, back in that. But great to see you again, Denise. It's always a pleasure.
Good to see you too. And Barbie at the Pearly Gates. I love it. Thank you, Brian.
Great. Great.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that was Denise Duhamel. Do check out that and the new issue of Rattle interview about collaboration too, because she's a great collaborating poet, has a lot of fun with that. Now let's go back to the prompt lines, and who is next in line? Let's see. Bishwajit Mishra is next up. Maybe things are a little bit randomized, maybe in my little screen. I don't know. Bish is usually toward the end. How you doing today?
Good, thank you. Why did you not read your poem you posted on X? That was not that bad long.
Oh,
that was good, really.
that
I didn't look
really...
at the title. I didn't know that word.
Well, yeah, that one is too long, I thought, for the thing. So it's more of a longer, and my
I mean, the way
definition of a
you read,
longer
I
poem.
don't think it'll be good with your voice. I mean, I'm not trying to just suck up to you, but it did sound good.
Well, I'm glad you like that one. So what do you have to
Okay.
share with us, though, Biz?
So I sent two. One is a real short tanka that I had shared, but the other one is like 200 word. Is that okay, or I'll leave the tanka?
Oh, that's fine. Whatever you want to share. I think 200. I mean, your definition of a short poem is different than ours, and so
Okay.
you can define it. Go ahead.
No. I mean, there are a lot of people here. So, okay. So it's called A Crow's Call.
Okay.
Okay. Just give me a second. Okay.
No problem. I've got
A
it
crow's
up.
call.
Go ahead.
By the traffic lights, a crow is pecking and walking on the narrow concrete street between the shoulder and the edge of the island by the road. A strange place to find food. But the crow keeps looking and seems like finding something, as if something is holding her. All these cars must look like mammoths to her, even when stalled at the lights or taking the right exit. Her persistence, patience, surrounded by impatience, encouraged, unfazed by the passing vehicles, yet conscious enough not to step out to the road. Isn't this amazing? Isn't it divine, her balance of traits while finding her bread, different from me, who's clumsy in finding his? Am I not blessed to be in the same world at the same time, fortunate for the light to turn red, and for a change red is really green, letting me see a lake amid a torrent, and see earning bread is like playing games, while so far I have made playing games as mundane as earning bread. The ability to fly perhaps gives the stability to stay anchored, while my mind is flying inside a stationary vehicle at the red lights. Isn't this a miracle? That for a moment I am held in wonder.
Hang on. Yeah, that was great, Biz. I had myself on mute, but I was hoping, that these prompts would be really fun to read, because being in awe and noticing other people's awe is a really fun one, and it's paying off so far. Because that was a crow's call by Biz Mishra. Really enjoyed that. Thanks so much, Biz.
Thank you, team. I'll take 1 second. I sent you some other pictures. It's not for here, but when you get a chance, look at it. I think there's something screwed up in the mail, and I got two.
Gotcha.
2 copies.
Okay, I'll definitely check it out. Thanks for sharing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, that was Biz Mishra with A Crow's Call. And next up is Douglas Silver.
Hi, Tim. Good to see you.
Hey, Doug. Yeah, great to see you.
Thank you. I sent in one through email called A Task.
Okay. Let me pull it up. So what was your how did you approach this one as I pull it up?
I thought about my mother, actually, who's 91 years old, and she's going through lots of things, and I'm doing my best to support her. So this poem kind of came after a phone call with her.
Oh, that's great to see. Yeah, looking forward to it. Go ahead.
Thank you. A task. It's not that she's losing her memory, my mother, although she probably is, but who can blame her at 91? Going on 92, she says, like a proud little kid, usually the poster child for mindfulness. No yesterdays, no tomorrows, only now. It's more that she gets overwhelmed so quickly, so often, especially with something new she has to do, things about money, things about time. She had a task, a meeting with the big boss at her assisted living home, new bank accounts, direct debit, a contract to sign. Told me she couldn't sleep the nights before, rehearsing what she'd have to say. That morning, afterwards, she called me, beaming. I had my spy, Melinda, she says, at the front desk to alert me when she got here, the big boss. She did this in the middle of breakfast, and I rushed over with my paperwork. I said what I had to say, did what I had to do. Done, my mother said, in 5 minutes' time. I really can't believe I did all this. I knew you could, Mom, I told her. I'm so proud of you. Then she replied, and so am I.
Oh, that's
you.
great. Yeah, such a sweet poem. I just love it when we get sweet poems, and this prompt is really paying off. Thanks, Doug, for sharing that.
Thanks, Tim.
That was Douglas Silver with A Task. And next, let's go to Audrey Friedman.
Good evening.
Hey, Audrey. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see everybody. All right, this poem needs no explanation. And I was very short. I think it was 20 words.
Oh, excellent. I wonder if it's a competition who can have the fewest words. So far, it's 20. Well, I love those competitions when nobody knows they're competing.
I win the prize.
So 20 is the gauntlet you've thrown down with this one. Let's hear it.
Okay, so this is a tanka. Father's Day, June 18th, 1967. The giant's ring fit Grandpa's finger. My blind date engaged in a handshake that taught him a new gospel.
Oh, I love that. A lot compact into that tanka. Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much for sharing that, Audrey.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work tonight.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That was Audrey Friedman with Father's Day. Yeah, excellent. Excellent tanka. Let's go next to Nate Jacob.
Hey there, Tim.
Hey, Nate. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you. Hey, hate to ruin this, but I didn't send anything really sweet.
Uh-oh. Well, that's okay. Someone's got to have some, non-sweet, some bitter to push off the sweet against so we can appreciate it more. And that's your role tonight, Nate.
I'm doing my part then.
You are.
Hey, it is a true story here, though. And if anyone at the end has questions on how to do this, they can message me. It really worked.
All right. Okay. Well, this looks like some good advice. Go ahead.
The title, Every Beautiful Thing Has a Price. A bargain at only $5. So instead of a taco dinner, I told her that I'd buy it from her, the dime-sized wart on her foot. Her parents laughed. She doubted. When I told her that beauty gives way to warts at times, if the beauty believes it's ugly. Luckily, that beautiful child knew as well as I did that day that 3 tacos were $5. So she shook on it, sold it to me. 2 weeks later, over more tacos, her father showed me her foot, the wart having left no trace. They all wondered about witchcraft, when what should have been was a renewed awe over beauty, turning every ugliness for better into a dinner, and an agreement that beauty does matter, and that it is in us all, no matter what we believe, no matter the warts we hide it behind.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah. So what was the cure for that? Did it?
So I have in my lifetime bought several warts from people who've had stubborn warts that won't go away. And they go away within a couple weeks every time. Yeah.
that is quite the strange magic power you've got there, Nate. But
it is, and it works every time. So
wow. Well, now we know we can we know where to turn, and he takes the money.
I lose the money. I get the wart.
Oh, that's true. Well, I'm glad you're that generous. Give it out. Yeah, thanks, Nate.
I'm here to help.
All right, take care. So Nate Jacob with Everything Beautiful Has a Price. All right, and next let's go to Sharon Ferrante.
Hi.
Hey, Sharon. Hello. Good to see you.
Sam, good to see you. Great show. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And this is a prompt right up your alley, being short poems. And I was wondering if it'd be a Charita, and it is.
Yes. And I wanted to say thank you for the interview with Raymond. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I've
and last week, James, I didn't get to watch the show, but I watched it next day. Oh my God, it was so beautiful. And then Katie came out with that prompt. I'm like, this is a beautiful prompt. Someone else's all. I'm like, guess what? I got 20 words.
Great, so a tie. Interesting. Okay.
I did a few Charita, and I chose the one I liked the best.
Oh, that's great. Well, let's hear it.
I watched him focus, shape the O with his mouth. Without looking, I too can see the rings of Saturn.
Oh, that's such a sweet one. I love that. Yeah, great, Charita. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. I'm just loving the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you, Sharon. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, we were looking through the telescope.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
feel
Yeah,
really
I got it. I totally got it. And it's great. It really is.
It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, Katie, thank you. Yeah.
Well, Sharon Ferrante with I Watch Him Focus, or The Awe. All right. Next up, let's go to Jonathan Rongan. There you are. Hello. Yeah, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Great to see you.
Good to see you all. Thank you so much for having me. I wrote this poem called The Magic Goes Baboom. I read Cinderella to my 6-year-old. He was amazed and agape. We were midway when he didn't allow me to turn the page. He shushed our story world. With a freeze-the-frame quiet, his rising inner awe lurked in the tunnel of his mouth. His reverence was intense, like a cut grade of a diamond, facets with fine focus. I wondered about his fascination. Was it the dance and the romance, or the glass slipper? His shiver load was close to a spill, a bare tree, springing with nub leaves. All at once, his rivulet of queries gurgled out. Wasn't the magic supposed to wear off at midnight sharp? On the chime? In the ballroom or the stairs? Why didn't the horses fizzle back into mice and the coach into pumpkin? Was the clock slow and Cinderella too fast? And the time was running infinite that night.
Oh, great turn in that poem. Yeah, I did not see that was going. I read Cinderella to my 6-year-old son. Beautiful sense of that. I love going back to that at the end. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Jayanthi.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yep, take care.
You too.
There was a Jayanthi Rongan with The Magic Goes Baboom. Great title, too. Next up, we have a first-time guest, I believe, and it's David Hutchison Tipton. So, hey, David. Oops, I muted you by accident. I'll mute again. Nope. You got to unmute again. I accidentally... You clicked...
Okay.
There you go. Hello.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah, it's a bad... for your first time, it's an annoying thing that I do sometimes. If you unmute right as I ask you to unmute, then it mutes you. So we got you, though.
I'll have to be careful my timing there.
So how you doing? Great. Thanks so much for joining. Where are you calling from?
I love this. I'm calling from Centennial, Colorado. And I hope to make it frequently because I love the guests the last few weeks, and this group is fantastic. So
well, I'm so glad. Yeah, so glad you're here, and so glad you're sharing a poem for the first time. What do you got for us?
I have it's 25-ish.
So a second
words, depending on how you count. But yeah, I wanted to get that in there a little bit. So it's called Cathedral.
Interesting. Okay.
As the stained glass dappled sun danced upon the marble arches, my brother raised his eyes to the vaulted ceiling of the nave, his mouth agape.
Beautiful capturing that moment. Yeah, the awe. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for joining. Hope you make it regular every week. That'd be great.
I'm gonna do my best.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was David Hutchison Tipton with Cathedral. Next in line we have Laura Berg.
Hi.
Hey, Laura. Yeah, good to see you.
Well, my poem has a mouth in it too. I guess awe makes us think of mouths, but Nate thought of feet.
That's true.
Okay, so here it is.
Okay.
Photo 51. All hail Dr. Rosalind Franklin's X-ray crystallography, as seen in photo 51, first to reveal the double helix. Witty twists, magical rungs and measures, script. How my mother's eyes would gleam gazing at this, right side of her mouth tilting up in wonder. Enough to make me jealous, tugging at her sleeve as she prepared a lecture for night school bio class, at the same time tenting her curious, treasured kids, within whom a myriad of helixes mixed, yet to be read messages from those who came before into the future. Love us.
Beautiful ending in that, and I never knew that. Photo 51, that's really cool. I want to go see that. Dr. Rosalind Franklin, thanks for sharing
That's
that.
kind of amazing. It was a woman scientist who took that. And somehow she died 3 years before the Nobel Prize was given for the discovery, and she wasn't included.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah. Well, I probably have seen the picture, but just didn't know any of the backstory. And then where you took it was great. Thanks so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was Laura Berg with photo 51. Chelsea McClellan is next.
Hello, good evening.
Hey, good evening. Yeah, thanks for joining again. Good to see you.
You too.
Let me pull up your poem. Let me find it 1 second. There's a lot of ones in here. I'm slow on the draw. People watching on the original stream still notice that. Okay, I found it. Okay, so what do you got? Do you want to say anything about it before you dive in?
Just that I guess I'm sharing a bit of a personal poem this week just because I wanted to share something a little more lighthearted than last week. And yeah, I'm trying to do this more often, capturing a moment that happens with my children so that I can hopefully have them read them to me when I'm old.
Oh, that's a great plan and wonderful too. And the last week's poem was so powerful and good. It was great. Like reading was great too. So looking forward to seeing or listening to this. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is, I consider answering, but then refrain, with a quote from Charlotte Mason, which says, "What a child digs for is his own possession. What is poured into his ear, like the idle song of a pleasant singer, floats out as lightly as it came in and is rarely assimilated." I consider answering, but then refrain. Ashwagandha, only hardy to zone 7, must be harvested by fall, but the stubborn, hopeful child still alive within me left one, standing there, as if zone 6 were southern, there, where her bare feet ran to first, where the pale red and wrinkled berry, squeezed between her thumb and pointing finger, birthed 100 seeds, Shawaganga babies, if you asked her. My clear delight sparked in her a change. Now she is my orchard guide. Apple, plum, it died. Chamomile, Shawaganga, Mommy, this one is the pawpaw tree. With pride, I think, why am I so surprised by her memory? She thinks, then asks me, where's the mawmaw tree?
Oh, what a sweet poem. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing that, Chelsea.
Thanks.
Aw. Yeah, I missed that age. My kids are now 9 and 13. I consider answering, but then refrain, by Chelsea McClellan. Thanks for sharing that, Chelsea. And next, let's go to Zachary Honeycutt.
Hello, Tim.
Hey, Zach. Welcome aboard.
Yeah. Hey, is tonight a one poem limit? I didn't know.
It's always a one poem limit unless they're like tiny poems, but I guess I did say short. What do you have?
There's sonnets. I got some sonnets. What do you think?
2 sonnets. I'll accept 2 sonnets.
Okay, awesome.
As long as they're actually sonnets and not like a 140 line sonnet or something like that.
No, they're all 14 line sonnets.
Okay.
I decided to do this because someone was asking in our Facebook group about sonnets not that long ago. Somebody new, and I just thought, since I'm the sonnet person, why not crank out a few sonnets tonight and just show like a refresher on how to do different types. So I've got all 3 different types here. So I'll just read 2 of them.
Okay. And are they prompt related?
First one is, yes, they
Okay.
are.
Okay, sounds
Yeah,
good.
first one
all
is
right.
the
Just
current.
gotta keep you inside the lines here.
Yeah, they're inside the line. So
Okay.
this one is the current prompt, the all one. This was the earliest sonnet I ever wrote when I was 15. It's
Ah.
got a special place in my heart. It was about a high school crush that I had, very romantic. And this one's really silly because I didn't even know that sonnets could be different than Shakespearean. So there's like happily anon, and there's all these old English phrases, catchphrases in here before I really knew what I was doing. So this was the first sonnet that I ever wrote. Essence of a Maiden. Whence I saw her, I never can recall, for so overwhelming a sight was she, a slender maiden, so fair and so tall, laden with awe to be admired by me. At long last, her vibrant eyes met my gaze, revealing to her my deep affection. Her angelic beauty is what I praise, a prime picture of most pure perfection. Her blue-gray eyes are like a sunless cloud. Her face is exotic, like wildflowers. This glorious goddess shines in the crowd. The dirty crowds among my sweet are sour. Haply anon I'll lay hold of my sweet and lift this enchantment off of her feet.
Ah, nice Shakespearean sonnet there. I love the flower sour rhyme. That's my favorite one in the Essence of a Maiden. Okay, so we have the Shakespearean. What's the other one you're going to do?
Okay, so these two, I don't know how to do this because I did the other prompt from a few weeks ago where you take an old poem and then you change the ending. So this first sonnet really doesn't have anything to do with the actual prompt because this is the original one. But this is a great example of an Italian sonnet. I have the whole structure laid out here with the 8-line octet and the 6-line sestet. And then I labeled the volta here so people could just see the turn. And I just put how this, the sestet proposes the initial observation, and then the sestet is responding to it. And in this particular sonnet, it changes perspective. The second stanza changes perspective. So, the invaders of Central Park. Those 5 yellow dots hanging lower than a baritone, as still as winter's death, and warmer than the cool from your fire-hot breath, then falling down swiftly as autumn leaves can, like leaves with a brain stem that think and plan and move in restless spurts, spirits from undeath, floating somewhere dark, evaporating like breath, but then a light, and out of it a woman. Stop pointing, babe, she says rather coolly. I must have dozed tonight upon your arm. It's way too hot. At home I'll take a dip. I fear, my dear, I must speak kind of cruelly. We're not in the buggy, no need for alarm, but the horse is gone, and we're inside the ship.
Oh, very interesting.
Sci-fi
twist there. I love all the sci-fi twists you pull in. And an excellent example of the Italian sonnet with the octet and the sestet and the volta right there. Very prominent turn, too, and the voice very audibly changing. Great examples of the form. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Right, see you guys next week.
Yep, take care. Zachary Honeycutt once again with the 2 sonnets, The Invaders of Central Park and Essence of a Maiden. All right, and next in line we have Mike Bales.
Yeah, you should have it in submittable.
All right,
sharing.
well, give me a second to pull it up. So what were you writing about?
A friend of mine at work. The first one I wrote, I wrote it and went, that's not short. So then I redid it, and it's sharing.
All right.
Sharing. I came to her in cosmetics. She said she liked the simple act of putting the items in place. We talked as she worked. I'd just gotten off from the checkout line. She said she would have her young son and daughter for the weekend. She said that seeing them got her through the roughest times. I showed her a poem and said that writing got me through mine. In a soft voice, she asked when I'd work again, and a light shone upon her. As she smiled, I was so happy to see her happy.
Oh, that's great. Another sweet poem. Thanks for sharing that, Mike.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that was Sharing by Mike Bales. Let's go to Carolyn Codd next. Hi, Carolyn.
Hello.
Hi, great to see you.
Hi. My connection doesn't seem too good today, but
yeah. Well, if you turn off
good
the
to see you.
video, do you want to turn? Click
When
to
I
turn
saw
off,
the prompt about awe, I
Yeah, if you click the stop video, then we can just hear
turn
it.
off what?
Yeah, it says stop video. If you turn off your camera, on the Zoom, then
Stop.
then we'll hear the voice
Oh,
clearly
okay.
at least. Yeah,
Yeah.
much better.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's not, the connection's not too good. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, when I saw the prompt about awe, I thought the way things are these days, I didn't see much awe around, except my own regular awe of the moon and the stars when I can see them, and my lemon tree.
Oh.
But then something happened, and that's what I wrote about. I think it's self-explanatory.
Okay,
So,
yeah, let's hear it.
It's called Witness. Late one night, there they were, Paul Simon and Stephen Colbert, in my living room, sharing their awe. Yes, they used that word. Previously, joyously sharing their awe of life, the universe, and the Creator. A most beautiful conversation. Hats off to them and to God, as they said.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I love it when there's anything on TV that's worthy of that kind of positivity. So it's really nice to hear. The wonder if I don't watch TV is because so little is like that. But yeah, glad to hear it exists still.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, well, take care. Thanks, Carolyn.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Carolyn Codd with Witness. And next, let's go to Brian O'Sullivan. Hey, Brian.
So, I was planning to read the extra poem that I had from last week, because it does have the sort of theme of another's awe at the end. However,
perfect.
since it's last week's prompt, it is a sestina, so it's kind of long, and it's getting late. So if you want, you can skip to the end, and I'll just read the haiku that I
we
also
want you to read the whole sestina. Yeah.
Okay, cool. If you insist. Thank you. It's called Humankind. I want to, so it has, as per last week's prompt, it has an epigraph. I want to add that human kindness is like this, never really changing, never gone. Abby E. Mary, Supermoon. It's like the blood left on the murderer's hands. It never leaves, however much that lady might implore. It's like the river in your wrist. Maybe it speeds and slows, but it's really always there while yet you live. It's what is. Though elusive as a golden ticket, that gift of kindness, it's like what's left when a fever's grasp is gone. It's constant as the moon's inconstancy. When gone, it still remains in bits of verse, an echo that never quite stops echoing in the ether, despite the grim kindness of entropy. It's kind of like a particle and kind of like a wavering apparition. It's whatever is and whatever is not. It's a rumor that can't be falsified. It's really another way of saying, not really. When the play is over, but the backdrop is not gone. When the song is over, but the earworm is still turning. When smoke always, but essence never follows the Black Parade existentialist. Then it's like a little more than kin and less than kindness. An almost quote that trails off, trusting the kindness of readers to know what I mean, but can they really? Find it in the archives driving chatbots. What we've liked, they are. When the singularity has come and gone, what will remain? The streak on the tub that never departs, the shared plastic bottle lying in the heap. Is that it? Our refuse, our regrets, our shit? Is that what will be left of us at last? Is it unkindness to think it might go that way? I don't mean I never try to be cynical, but sometimes, though I really want to be an optimist, the rainbow's gone from the oil slick, and it doesn't care that I'd like to see it. I often wish we'd had a kid. I'd like to hold a parent's charge to see what is, but carry hope that when we're gone, what will be not cruelty, but the kindness that made Abby's child ask. As if there really were a chocolate river that runs where never is a sweet dream denied. as if humankindness could really overflow and never stop, as if the moon could rise when the sun is gone.
Oh, beautiful, Sistina, Brian. Thanks so much for sharing that. That was Humankind. And after the Abby Murray quote from Supermoon, hopefully Abby saw it. Did you happen to send that to her?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Yeah, well, you should. It was beautiful, Sistina. There's so many great lines in that. And really, you can see how the Sistina form works so well in some cases when people who know how to do it do it right. And, of course, Brian was on the as a regular on the Poetry Space that we do with Katie Dozier. And we just had an episode on Sistina's, and so Brian was talking about Sistina's there and his Sistina frenzy he's been in lately. So really fun to have you there too.
Really fun conversation.
Yeah, it really was a lot of fun. You find that just type in the Poetry Space on any podcasting catcher. You'll find that one. It was the most recent episode. Yeah, and you have a haiku here too. Do you want to go ahead and read that too? I mean,
sure,
it's a haiku. It just takes a second.
Absolutely, it's a haiku. Morning Tai Chi, grasping sparrow's tail, cat's eyelids twitch.
Oh, that's great
Morning
too.
Tai
A different
Chi,
kind of
sparrow's tail, cat's eyelids twitch.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, take care.
Take care.
Yeah, so Brian O'Sullivan. Sorry, I read over his second reading. I'll read it again. Morning Tai Chi, grasping sparrow's tail, cat's eyelids twitch. Yeah, that was great. And great Sistina too, Humankind by Brian O'Sullivan. Let's see. Next up we have... Joy Stahl is back for the first time in a while. It's great to see you, Joy. I don't know how long it's been, maybe a year or two.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've been.
And you're still in the classroom.
Yes, I am. I'm still in the classroom. It's easier to Zoom from here than from home.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm so glad you could join us again. What have you got for us?
I sent it in submittable right about the time the feed started.
Uh-huh. Okay, let me just pull it up. If you want to intro it all.
It's self-explanatory.
Okay, I've got it. So go ahead whenever you're ready.
Poetry in 6th grade. Their eyes alight, the 7 girls type words, phrases, rhymes, trying this and that, murmuring, then exclaiming in delight when words combine just right. Rushing to share a favorite line, deleting what doesn't work. Try a synonym, I coach. Each creating a poem in 6th grade English class. Writing poems was fun. Can I read mine to the class? When can we do this again? Every day. You can write poems every day.
Oh, that is so sweet. I love that. Do you have a regular poetry? Let them do that every so often.
Yes, I do. Mm-hmm. And all of my extra credit is to write poems.
Oh, that's so great, because you know what? That was why I started writing poems too. I had an English class, and once a week you could write a poem for extra credit, or you could write a short story. I realized that a poem was quicker because there are fewer words, and so I started writing a poem for English class every week. So hopefully, you'll inspire a lot of poets too.
I hope so. I fell in love with poetry when I was in English class, probably 2nd or 3rd grade.
Mm-hmm. Well, very great. So glad you're passing that on to the next generation. Thanks, Joy.
Thank you.
That was Joy Stahl with poetry in the 6th grade. Next in line, we have Rob Harris.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm great. Good to see you, Rob.
Good. Thank you. I want to set this up by saying I was hearing people talk about their kids and how fast they grow, and I'm proof of that because my little one is somehow a junior in college now.
Oh, wow.
And so her mom and I went to Tulane University for the New Orleans Book Festival just last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote about something that happened there. Wasn't quite sure how I was going to approach the topic, but sometimes just the moment presents itself and you have to capture it. So that's what I did.
Oh, great. Well, I'm interested in hearing this. Go ahead.
My all poem is called On the Couch with Oprah. The session's moderator asked Jesmyn Ward to describe the success she had achieved through writing several award-winning books. For a moment, she pondered the question, since every writer dreams of being in her position, but almost none will ever attain it. She answered by providing an example which none in the audience could relate to, but everyone can readily understand. How do you sit on the couch with Oprah and use words? I mean, she's right there. You just have to do the best you can and hope you don't embarrass yourself. For the hundreds who were in attendance, both authors and readers alike, her answer was quite enough.
That's a great line. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Rob. Yeah.
The look on her face as she was trying to figure out how to respond told me, hey, wait, something's coming here. Be ready for it. And it was a great session. I mean, I would highly recommend if you have the chance or the opportunity to get down to New Orleans. They do it every year. We had a great time. Just for anyone who's interested in the future, give it some thought.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thanks for sharing that, both the story and that quote, which is very memorable too. Thanks for sharing it, Rob.
Thank you. Take care.
Yeah, that was Rob Harris with On the Couch with Oprah. Next is Mary Lisa DiDominicis. Hey, Mary Lisa. Are you there? There you are. Hello.
Sorry, I was trying. Yeah. Hi, how are you? Trying to unmute myself there.
Yeah, no problem. Good to see you.
Good to see everybody. Great poems again. By everybody. Okay. I wrote two. I spent like a week on the one, and then the other one I just wrote yesterday. So I think I'm going to read that one. I like it. I think I like it better.
Okay, great.
They're both short, but this for me they're short. This is Dorothy by the Sea.
Okay.
March in the middle of daffodils, splashing yellow under yellow sun, surrounded by water and bridges, a half moon above in a bright blue sky, opposite the sun, casting my shoulder into shadow onto paper while warming me against wind, and all of this spins me still into awe, the beauty of it all and the feel of it, wind kissing my ear, cool smooth sand pebble, beach rock, sea salt, old dock, children yelling mommy more for attention than out of fear, the sound of laughter too, the low rumble of traffic in the distance, crossing the bridges, bikes wheeled across the docks, cars parked in lots, Ferris wheels on two islands I can see from here in the distance, seagulls, falcons held, well fed and released to keep the seagulls away from people, a couple beneath the gazebo, kissing, and such a tender, warm wind. Suddenly, every red dog is excited, jumping for joy, despite their leashes. Every mutt and pure breed. One spring breeze, and even the cats begin to boomerang from room to room. The new kitten is amazed. Why shouldn't I be too? Can't I be still a bit animal inside, a bit child?
Oh, that's great. I love when the every red dog is excited.
Yeah.
That's under.
I think that's beautiful. My favorite part of the poem too.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a little pedestrian because it's one of those you were talking earlier during the interview about poems that you really need to get out of you and then poems that are written in response to something. I feel this is a little weak, but
I don't know about that. I love the scene you painted there. Yeah, definitely. And I don't even agree with Raymond about I like poems being spit out. So I just
listen, I've been doing really well with these prompts, so I hope you and Katie, keep giving them.
Well, yeah. Do you want to do the other poem too, or would you rather?
They're a lot of fun. Oh, sure. If there's time, my son discovers his hands.
Yeah, why don't you? I love these awe poems. I'd like to hear another source of awe.
Cool. Okay. And yeah, this one is really short. So for me, yeah. My son discovers his hands. Lifting stone to the sun, my young son wonders out loud if hard things glow red like his hand does when light shines through his knuckles. I say, let's see, reach for the rock to show him, but his palm tightens around it before I have a chance to explain. He's testing his strength, throws all his 7-year-old weight into an aimless hurl, the stone's only destination, to land far enough away from me for me to understand. He doesn't want my explanation. But dandelions in my pocket just a minute before. You think your bodies separate at birth, but it is not one swift motion. This is constant. I feel our skins pull free, our bones go their separate ways.
Oh, I love that turn again too. So 2 poems with beautiful turns toward the end as the voice shifts there. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
I appreciate that so much. You're encouraging. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Take care, Mary Lisa.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Yeah, it's Mary Lisa Gidamonicius with My Son Discovers His Hands and Dorothy by the Sea. And I think there's 3 people left on the lines. Let's go to Chelsea McGlynn next.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can. Yeah, great to hear you, Chelsea.
Oh, right. Thanks. My internet service is terrible, so I won't put on my video.
Yeah, no problem. That's a good choice because it definitely sounds a little thin, but we hear you clearly, so that's good.
Okay, good. So my poem is all true story. It's called The Only Kid in the World.
Oh, great.
And do you have a copy of it? I emailed it to you.
Yeah, I do. It's up, so go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay. The Only Kid in the World, June 2020. You were only 3. The playgrounds were roped off with caution tape. The library silent at story time. You knew why you couldn't see your friends again. They all died. I couldn't convince you otherwise. I took you to the woods to make houses for fairies. You declared that fairies weren't real. I gave you dandelion heads to make wishes for ice cream. You wished the bad germs would go away. I took you to stone monuments and battlefields and told you they were Rapunzel's powers, a princess like you. You scraped your knee, sobbing that real princesses don't bleed. I told you that next year you would go to preschool. You gasped at that on the TV or the computer. I told you in real life. You asked, alone or with a friend? I told you would have 12. With widened eyes, you declared that must be all the kids left in the whole world.
Oh, yeah, that's a great last line and quote. Thanks for sharing that and turn that into a poem.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was Chelsea McGlynn with The Only Kid in the World. Yeah, I love that. Let's go next to Joanna Woods.
Hello.
Hi, Joanna. Great to see you again.
Great to be here. I've been so enjoying hearing everyone's poems. The imagery has been so cool and really inspiring.
Yeah, I love the subject matter. I just like, I love when there's positivity around. There's so much to, to fret about, but then there's joy too.
Yeah, it's really great. I sent you a poem about snook.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been snook fishing, but I know some avid fans, and specifically my dad. And so
I think you're gonna have to explain it. I never heard of snook.
So I was born like Katie in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and in the South of Florida there is a predator fish, or an apex predator, white-fleshed, very delicious sport fish called snook. So if you go back to 1995, they were legal to competitively fish, but they would only have very limited seasons, and they had specific specs, and they're just really challenging to catch because they're very smart and they have super sharp gills. So they'll run a line, clear out, they'll wrap you around pilings, they'll flip and cut.
Oh, wow.
You can have a 20-minute or 30-minute fight, and they're not huge, but they're for people who love fishing, which again, I've never actually been snook fishing. This is just hearing the stories. It's a whole adventure. I think the rules are all different now. So I was kind of remembering the rules, and then I started Googling. I was like, they don't have the same rules. I'm just going to go with my memory because everything's changed since 1995.
Great. Yeah, well, I'd love to learn about that. That's really fascinating. Thanks for sharing all that. Let's hear the poem.
All right. So prompt poem, snook season. Low tide waiting. Feet seek challenge. Easy equals cheap. Waist deep, sandy slips. Seagrass weeps and waves. Cast between the pilings. Barnacle crusted. Dock-like calling prey. For apex king so fat and full, no bite. Just watch the silver shimmer by unattained. 2, trawling mangroves. Between the darkly gripping roots, still motor. Paddle slide quiet in. Plywood bench a balance plank. Bucket live, 5-gallon slushing weight. Thread embedded barbs. Lean back. Swing. Let flying line sing. Let's sing a flying line. Oh, whatever. Plop. Wrist tension light. Dance faded bait. Twitch and dart. Reel back. 3, chosen spot. Look deep. Keep hand alert, waiting for the hit. Wham! And set the hook. Full body turn and let it run. Fool will fight the lead. Snook must tire before it yields. Race side to side. Stay at the nose. 20-pound test, no match for gills and sharpened will. 4, to keep. 24 or more, but not 32. Work close your pride in the kitchen sink. Silver sides scraped smooth. The flash, now sharpest knife. Flesh white as far off mountain peaks. And show your wife. She'll cheer. Double yoke your pride and melt a butter stick.
That's great. Love the ending. And that, I'm not a fisherman person. I haven't gone fishing maybe like 3 times with kids. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
But that makes me want to, all those details. Thanks for sharing that. That sounds fun.
Thanks. I really enjoyed the prompt. Thanks, Katie, for the good one. I'll switch to YouTube. See you over there.
All right. Thanks. Take care. There's Joanna Wood with Snook Season. Snook Season. Interesting. I'll Google that too later. A couple more people left in line. Let's go to Lucy Chow next.
Hello.
Hey, Lucy. Good to hear you.
Yeah, hello. I'm enjoying everybody's poems.
So what have you got for us?
I wrote 2 this week, and very unusually for me there. I think by everybody's standard tonight, I think they are pretty short, even for like short poems.
They definitely are, yeah. And it's cool to see. I already saw the Yosemite appear again. So fun to see that transition as you come over to the States for school.
Yeah, so I think I'll read both.
Yeah, feel free. They're short. Go ahead.
This first one is for a naturalist and nature educator, Claire Walker Leslie, who has had a big influence on me since I was a little kid, and all this nature stuff you see in my poetry is traceable to her influence, and so this one is about my all for her.
Okay, great.
One day in your year in nature. February sunset, warming red upon into forth from a robin's breast. I sit down with your watercolor meditation. Smear sap on the page as trees splash petals in mud. How nature sheds not a drop of wasted blood. The back of my hand blooms like a camellia, soon to pale to a creamy moon.
Oh, that was beautiful.
And this second one is kind of like, it's a playful one.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in awe of little flowers. It's a common spring woodland wildflower, Nemophila.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has a beautiful name, so I looked it up, and turns out it means loving the woods.
Oh.
So I think it's the little flowers sort of in all of the sun coming through the spring woods, which is not yet leafing out. So, and its common name is baby's blue eyes. So it also got this like other kind of awe, a baby's awe. And actually, I saw it in Berkeley the other day. So interesting. Nemophila. Baby's blue eyes open to spring sunset, apricot, rose, lilac. Berkeley breeze frisking, fuzzing maples softly as stars above Yosemite.
Yeah, very cool. And it looks like a Charita too. Thanks for sharing that. And that was Lucy Chow with 2 poems. She had One Day in Your Year in Nature, and that Nemo feel. Thanks so much for sharing that, Lucy. All right. And last but not least on the Zoom is Jared Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, Jared.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
How you
Hello.
doing?
Good to see you.
Yep, good to see you. So I wrote about watching Prehistoric Planet with a 4-year-old child.
Uh-huh. Oh, that's great.
And it's maybe worth noting, just in case people don't know what a mosasaur looks like and what an ammonite looks like.
Oh, okay.
So this is an ammonite,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this is a mosasaur. Mosasaur globidens compared to a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to watch dinosaurs, he announces, running into my office. He loves these stories of hunger and conflict, a Tyrannosaurus tearing into a fallen sauropod, a young Triceratops who breaks a horn wrestling with an elder for a mate. A huge shoal of tiger ammonites, each carrying hundreds of fertilized eggs, comes up the North American inland sea to lay them safely in the rocky shallows. A mosasaur seizes one and punctures her shell. The chambered air she uses to control her buoyancy escapes, and she slowly sinks and settles on the seabed where she waits, with fallen sisters, for the mosasaur to descend and eat them one by one. Benjamin's eyes grow wide. His mouth drops open. Slowly, he says, "This is a sad show."
Aw. Yeah, that's very sweet too. You know, like getting the awe from the kids is sweet. Thanks so much for sharing that, Jared.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Yep. Take care. It was Jared Campbell with watching Prehistoric Planet with a 4-year-old. Always a pleasure. Definitely. Next, let's see what we have. I think a few people. Yeah, Ted Guevara. We haven't read one of Ted's in a while, and we got a little bit of room. So let's read Ted's poem. And as always he does, he includes a really interesting photo that he gets from somewhere. I don't even know where. This is the photo that Ted included this time. And this is, for those just listening, it is it looks like the UN. So those tables around the UN, people voting. And then somehow like collaged with that, at the top of the photo is a farmer with an old plow, plowing a field. So interesting image there. And here's Ted's poem. Somebody's awe. Shun the black cloth out of these trees. We fear the blanket of temerity. It has nothing to do with snow. So somebody's awe, a very short poem. Then he's got another one, a clove of seasons. If not for 7 trees in the fall, crashes of snow would stick to silence. And then the last of 3 short poems, kind, not necessarily my kin. If a first kid gets hit by a second kid, does the first kid say, go ahead, annihilate me? Or would he wish peace where he gets by? Interesting triptych of poems there. Thanks for sharing those, Ted. I think the first one's my favorite, Somebody's Awe, but I love them all. Thanks for sharing them. So Ted Bernal Guevara with 3 awe poems. And then, let's see. Let's trying to see who I saw on the Zoom, who I should also include. Yeah. All right, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for the show today. Thanks everybody for sharing your poems. It's really fun. Let's go to the Sciku for this week. And the Sciku is based on this article, which I will pull up on the screen right now. This is from Queen Mary University of London. And the story that caught my eye this week was this. Bees master complex tasks through social interaction. Bumblebees surprise scientists with advanced social learning skills. And what they did here is they took bees and they made this sort of complicated box for them to get to, that they had to get through to get to the sweet stuff. And there was no way the bees could do it, like learn. It was too complicated for them to learn on their own just by like sitting there in this box over time. But what they did is use sort of classical operant conditioning and sort of walked a few bees through that process of like a few steps to get out of this puzzle box they were in. And then put those bees in with the bees that didn't know how to do it. And the bees could watch, learn how the other bees figured out how to navigate this sort of like puzzle, and then repeat it themselves. So if they had another bee who knew to learn from, they learned how to do it. And if they didn't have a bee to learn from, they never did. And so it's an amazing thing because we thought that humans were the only creatures on Earth that could learn in a social way like that. And the bumblebees actually can do it too. So, and actually the article says that, but I've seen ways that some, I think, chimpanzees fish with sticks too and are taught. So I don't know if that's true. They need to talk to, that's what we were talking about before. The scientists don't always talk to each other because the primatologists would correct that if they got to read this article. But anyway, that is the article that I was thinking of today. And this is the Sciku based on that article. Here we are. It's a monoku, a little single one. And it's right here. Bumbling as much as we are bees. Bumbling as much as we are bees. That is the one-line haiku for the week, and that is the show for the week. Thanks, everybody. Raymond Hammond was a great guest. Really fun to have have him on the show. We had great prompt lines. Denise Duhamel was here. That was great. Great opening poem. Really fun, just all around. Next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Jose Edmundo Ocampo Reyes. He's a poet that we published way back a while ago, and I've been friends with him on social media for a long time. A really brilliant guy. He's one of the Powwow River poets, so one of that group founded by Rena Espaillat, a formalist. He has a chapbook, Present Values, we're talking about, but also poetry too, and I'm curious to learn more about him. He's a really interesting guy. That's going to be Rattlecast number 238. With Jose Edmundo Ocampo Reyes, Monday, March 25th, the regular time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime. And I should say, too, there's going to be no critique of the week or the poetry space this week. We're taking a little short road trip toward the in a few days. So not going to be that. We'll be back next week with that, too. So the next thing we're doing, really, with Rattle is this Rattlecast number 238. So hope to see you there. Hope you have a great week in the meantime. And I'll talk to you later. Good night. Oops, yeah. So as I looked over and Outer Writings pointed out, Tim forgot the prompt. We definitely need Katie Dozier here to keep me on task because I forgot to mention the prompt for next week. Sheesh. So the prompt for next week is this. Here you go. It is to write a poem from the perspective of one of your childhood toys. And that, of course, is referring after the Denise Duhamel poem, the Barbie poem she does from her book Kinky, and the new one for the first time coming out. Let's write a poem from the perspective of your childhood toys. For anybody who's still listening, I did forget that. But of course, it's always in the show notes. It's at rattle.com/prompts. It's on the submission page, or it will be just very shortly, and submittable too. So you can always find out what the prompts are, even if I forget to say it like I just did. But anyway, that is the prompt for next week. And again, next week's guest is going to be Jose Edmundo Ocampo Reyes. And now we'll help you have a good night. I'll talk to you later. Bye.